They didn't even give the man a greeting, but a few days later, that same man became the owner of their entire future. What was ignored, that changed everything amid the skyscrapers of New York, where dreams are made and broken every day. On the 50th floor of the Eastbrook Tower was a boardroom where decisions changed the fate of millions of dollars. The city lights shone through the glass walls, but the atmosphere inside the room was strangely harsh and cold. This was no ordinary meeting, this was a show of power. Sitting at the head of the table was Victoria Harper, the CEO of Harper Technologies, 40 years old, with a stern tone, sharp eyes, and a confidence that wouldn't let anyone get close. The woman who had risen from poverty and brought the corporate world to her feet. To her, respect meant power, status, and control. Suddenly, the door slowly opened. The assistant came and said, "Madam, Mr. Elias Gray has arrived." Victoria said without looking up, "Let him in." The door opened wide. A man entered the room, a simple coat, an old but clean jacket, graying hair, and a strange calm in his eyes. His name was Elias Gray. No expensive watch, no branded suit, no noise of power, but there was a pause in his steps, the pause that comes from those who have seen life. Elias smiled and extended his hand. Victoria looked him up and down, then did not shake hands. Instead, he closed his file, leaned back in his chair a little and said with a cold laugh, "I think you've come to the wrong place. This is an investors' meeting." The room fell silent. Some executives began to lower their eyes, some forced a smile. Elias's hand slowly came down, his smile faltered but did not fade. "I was told that my presence was necessary." Victoria said heartlessly, "Look, we have a lot of time. If you have come for an NGO or a charity project." She could not finish the sentence, because Elias showed neither anger nor embarrassment. He only said, "I understand," and walked out silently. The door closed, but what did not close was mantelpiece clock. The truth that no one knew that Elias Gray had spent 30 years of his life supporting small businesses. He did not make noise. His name did not appear in the newspapers. He believed in people when the world turned its back on them. And today that same man was the last hope of Harper Technologies. That afternoon, the financial charts began to fall. A major client had broken a contract. Shares were falling. Victoria slammed her hand on the table. "We'll handle it ourselves. We don't need anyone." But the truth was that the walls were cracking. At night, in her penthouse office, she looked out at the city lights. The glass reflected her, powerful, tough, alone. And for the first time, she felt fear. Elias's face came before her eyes. A look that held understanding, not accusation. The next day, another client left. The boardroom was silent. Finally, a senior director spoke, "We need Elias Gray. More than money, his intelligence." The sentence struck Victoria's pride like a hammer. She closed her eyes. For the first time he realized that power does not walk alone. Elias met in a small community center. The children were drawing pictures, the old people were laughing. He was sitting on the ground arranging pencils. Victoria's heart trembled. He said in a trembling voice, "I made a mistake. I didn't think you were human." Elias raised his head, neither anger nor revenge, only peace. "Honoris not in clothes, it is in the heart." Here the story changes from the inside. Elias helped, but with a condition: change your attitude, not power, learn humanity. Victoria began to change, listened, understand, bend. The company survived, but the greatest achievement was not this. She herself survived. The real strength is not the one who sits at the head of the table, but the one who bends down, extends his hand and forgives. The quiet atmosphere of the community center was no less than a courtroom for Victoria Harper. The woman who once pronounced judgments in glass rooms today sat in an ordinary chair, shoulders slumped, with helplessness in her eyes. Elias Gray sat across from her. No file, no contract, just a simple cup of tea. Victoria said softly, "I've always thought that showing weakness is defeat, but today, I'm afraid of my own strength." Elias looked at her carefully, then he said, "Power becomes dangerous when it is empty of the heart." The sentence broke somewhere inside Victoria. Elias said clearly, "I will not invest in your company. At least not yet." Victoria's heart stopped beating. "First, I want to see what you can become as a person." This was not a business deal, this was satisfactory. Victoria bowed. You want to learn. The next week, Elias Gray at the office of Harper Technologies with no introduction, no etiquette. The employees were as surprised. This man and Hosea had not considered worthy of shaking hands. Today was sitting silently in the conference room. Victoria said in front of everyone, from today Mr. Elias Gray will guide us. Whispers filled the room. But Elias did not play PowerPoint, not photograph. He asked a question. How many of you work with fear in this company? Silence. Theno Andres, then another, then several. Victoria's heart sank. Elias said, fear gives temporary results, respect gives permanent success. Then he turned to Victoria. Are you ready to hear what you don't want to hear? Victoria nodded yes. That day she heard everything that no one had dared to say for years, that she was tough, that she seemed ruthless, that people were afraid of her, that they didn't trust her. Every word was a blow to her pride, but she didn't run away. That night Victoria sat in the office for a long time, reading each email, remembering each decision, those faces who were broken by his behavior. Tears fell silently. It wasn't weakness, it was cleanliness. The next day he surprised everyone. He said to a junior analyst, what is your opinion? For the first time someone saw CEO listening. He stopped shouting in meetings. He started writing thank yous in emails, apologized for mistakes. These were small things, but the impact was huge. Elias changed strategy, low profit but sustainable decisions, honest clients, long relationships. An old client came back, then another, the shares stopped, then slowly started to rise. But the biggest change wasn't in the numbers, the atmosphere in the office had changed. One day Victoria said to Elias, why did you believe in me? I wasn't worth it. Elias smiled. No one makes their worst mistake. This phrase was forever etched in Victoria's heart. Fire. That same week, a huge investor came to the meeting. There was only one condition, Elias Gray or not us. The eyes of the room were fixed on Victoria. Now the decision was in her hands. Would she choose power or humanity? The lights were dim in the meeting room, the fans were running slowly, but everyone in the room was beating fast. A big investor, Mr. Martin Smith, was sitting in front. He had a contract in his hand and one condition: we will not make a decision without Elias Gray. Victoria's heart was pounding. This was the moment for which she had left all pride, all ego, all pride. She took a deep breath and said in front of everyone, we must choose humanity over power, and I choose what is right, not what is easy. The room fell silent. All eyes were on Elias, who was as quiet and calm as ever. Handshake. Victoria extended her hand, not for business, not for investment, but for human respect and partnership. Elias took her hand, and for the first time in the boardroom, she felt the power that comes not from pride, but from the heart. Elias launched his strategy, reduced unnecessary expenses, increased confidence in employees' abilities, strengthened client relationships with community programs, emphasized teamwork and listening skills. The result was surprising. Old clients returned, shares were consolidated, employees' fear decreased, and their respect and participation increased. But the biggest change was Victoria's internal. She now began to listen, she now began to understand. She was no longer bound by the chains of pride. Speech balloon. One day, Victoria asked Elias, why did you trust me? I had made so many mistakes. Elias smiled and said, no human being is smaller than their worst mistakes. The greatest strength is in forgiving and believing in others. This moment was the beginning of a new world for Victoria. She understood, success is not only in wealth and possessions, but in humanity, trust and respect. Glowing star. Victoria now works in her offices with smiling employees. She listens to the ideas of junior employees in the boardroom. She shows cooperation and compassion instead of force. Elias, he continues his service in silence, but every decision, every guidance leaves an imprint of morality and love in this world. Love letter. Pride weakens, humanity strengthens. True strength comes from believing in others and forgiving them. Success is not just about money, but about respect, trust and compassion. Victoria's story reminds us sometimes the strongest people are not those who stand at the top, but those who bend down and extend their hand and choose grace over pride. White heavy check mark.